Good morning, Sunnyvale. Hope you're doing well. Make sure everything's working fine. Good morning. Looks like things are going okay. Welcome. Good morning. Good morning. Morning, Sunnyvale. Good morning. Happy Friday. Welcome to the end of September and, of course, the official beginning of fall. Welcome to my weekly virtual office hours. This week's early artwork is actually from my trip to Sacramento last week. And I think it was a Mexican mural, basically celebrating Dia de los Muertos, which we're just coming up onto that Halloween season. So I thought it'd be a good beginning for this week's live stream address. We didn't have a live stream last week because Saturday was State of the City, but actually at the end of last week, I was in Sacramento. And so we'll talk about that a little bit later, but it was a good trip. And, you know, as I'm going wherever I go in the world, I always make sure that I look at what art different cities are doing. And, you know, I'm always a big fan of murals, as people know. But let's go ahead and get started. Good morning. I'm Sunnyvale Mayor Larry Klein. Thank you for joining me again this week. It always seems to be a very busy week for the mayor. This is the 178th installment of my weekly virtual office hours. Hope everyone's doing well. Enjoying the cooler evenings. The days are definitely getting a lot shorter now. We've now reached 1,292 days since the March 16, 2020 county health order started the shelter in place in an attempt to slow the spread of COVID-19. You know, over 3 years ago, I converted my weekly coffee shop office hours into this weekly live stream address. And thanks for everyone who continues to join me, continues to say that they really appreciate hearing from their mayor each week. You know, it's been an amazing few years, but you know, for me, it's great to hear whether or not people are watching live or watching this video delayed. You know, these weekly addresses really allow me to reach out to a lot more people than my in-person office hours. And, you know, it gives me a chance to tell you, for one thing, what's been happening in the city, but give you some words of encouragement, tell you what's upcoming, and, you know, answer some of your questions. Because, you know, if one person has a question, probably 20 people have that same question. And, you know, most Fridays like today, I follow up this live stream address with in-person meetings at Bean Scene on Murphy Avenue. So if you'd like to reserve a 15 or 30-minute time slot, just email me at council@larryklein.com. and that's also the place where you can get your questions, but it's a great place to start figuring out if you want to meet, how we can meet. I'm basically full all this morning with mainly people there for about 15 minutes at a time. So you can always see my calendar at www.larryklein.com. But it's being able to meet with people, talk with people, and being available for when there's questions, when there's issues, when people just want to get more involved. So thank you for allowing me to serve Sunnyvale. Now let's go ahead and talk about what's happened at the federal, state, county, and city level over the last few weeks. 2 Saturdays ago, we celebrated the 40th anniversary for Our Daily Bread. And, Our Daily Bread is at a church right there next to Washington Park, and they provide lunch Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, regardless of people's, of your age, of what your needs are. They're willing to, provide food to anyone who needs it. And, for me, it's just been amazing to see how they had to pivot during COVID. They're back making some meals in person, but making sure that those that are in need are getting a warm meal, getting a hot meal, and just to see all those volunteers celebrating their 40th anniversary was just amazing. So happy to be there for that event. Last Monday, I was at Synopsis's new headquarters as they welcomed the Prime Minister of Vietnam and his delegation to Sunnyvale. Synopsis, it was basically a celebration for Synopsis collaboration with Vietnam to advance design capabilities and chip development, and so increasing that semiconductor workforce is good for Synopsis, and Synopsis is, I think, one of the 3 major companies to invest in Vietnam. And so to have that Prime Minister here to welcome him to Sunnyvale was really good. And this is part of the mayor's duties, is welcoming dignitaries to Sunnyvale, and always happy to do that. Last Wednesday, I headed to Sacramento along with several of my council members for the California League of Cities. And, I took the Amtrak Capitol Corridor up, and if you haven't taken that trip, it's always, I think it's a really good way to go to Sacramento for, I think it was something of like $36 each way. Not having to deal with the traffic, getting other things done on the train. It's been really good from that standpoint. But the California League of Cities is one of multiple organizations that represent our city, and that we send, representatives to for their conferences. California League of Cities is an advocacy group that tries to, get a voice for all the cities around the state, and so there's National League of Cities, which is a national effort. There's U.S. Conference of Mayors, which is just the mayors from all over the United States. And then there's California League of Cities, which has a peninsula division, which kind of represents, the South Bay here in the peninsula. But it's trying to make sure that we're able to advocate with our state legislatures, trying to make sure that they're passing the bills that we want, and making changes to those bills to make it better for cities. So happy to be at that in Sacramento last week, representing Sunnyvale, learning about different new programs that other cities they're implementing, talking to some of the state leaders, and connecting with council members across the state. I think it's been really good to highlight some of the things that Sunnyvale does well, and kind of educating other council members on things that their cities can do. So always happy to attend that and kind of highlight all the good things that Sunnyvale does. Our city manager actually had a presentation. So it had one session on building America's greenest city hall. And I think that was, really good to highlight, what we did in opening up our new city hall. back in March, and having the first LEED Platinum Net Zero City Hall in the nation was just fantastic. And then I came back Friday, and then Saturday morning, came back Friday afternoon. And then, of course, Saturday morning was the State of the City in our new City Hall. And, we actually, it was our first meeting where we christened our new council chamber. So it was, and I always love, the State of the City and putting my kind of thumbprint on that event. It started out with Indian music, and then we had African drummers who were actually at my first State of the City back in 2019. The African drummers led a procession to our new council chambers and had a very lively kickoff to the event. And then we actually, I had our county poet laureate, Chaka Campbell, kicked off our speeches with a poem that he created for the day. So a good amount of art and spoken word added for the speeches. And then I, of course, went through the State of the City speech. You can take a look at, I don't think I've published it yet, but you can take a look at the transcript. So I'll publish that, and also a link to the video when that goes online. But Sunnyvale is in a very good space as far as a very safe city. Ranked year after year in the top 10 safest cities. Declared to be happiest city in the nation. Of course, that was last December. It's amazing how many cities or how many newspapers pick that up again. So it's old news, but whenever we issue kind of the State of the City speech, people go through and reporters go through and pull out specific things. So they did that. We had our community awards, honoring Volunteer of the Year, Resident of the Year, Business of the Year. And then, of course, then there's also the Mayor's Award of Excellence. And so I'm, past mayors have given that to an individual, a group, or both that, have shown a history of excellence in our city. And for me, there's always lots of people that we can honor. And so, at last Saturday's State of the City, I announced 2 deserving awardees. So from an individual standpoint, I presented it to Kenny Lamb, owner of Bean Scene. And, Kenny and Linda and, their family has been running Bean Scene for over 18 years on Murphy Avenue. And, it's really been a family venture, but they've also made a big impact on Sunnyvale. So, it's like they've created a space for, students and families and nonprofits and businesses to meet, but they built friendships. They've given back to the community, especially during COVID, and, given back to sports teams, youth sports throughout the years. And so it was actually really fantastic to honor Kenny. I initially hadn't even thought about honoring him. It's somebody that I see, pretty much every week, multiple times, and several people suggested it. And I thought it was a great idea because, he was one of the first businesses to reopen their doors when some of the restrictions lifted. And so having people come inside and, actually be able to order, be able to sit down, they led the way as far as dealing with the county health orders and trying to create that space for people to reconnect. And then the Mayor's Award of Excellence for group effort went to Duo Project. And so that's a nonprofit foundation right here in Sunnyvale, focused on the brutal dog and cat meat trade in Asia and trying to end that. And, and just ensuring that dogs and cats are seen as family rather than food around the world. And so Andrea Gung actually came to my office hours of Being Seen about 5 years ago, and she took up the banner for, when she asked me about helping her nonprofit. I said that there was this idea that I had wanted to restart, was the Sunnyvale's Halloween Pet Parade. And so she took up that banner, and in 2019, we actually had our first Halloween Pet Parade in multiple years. and they continued, they continued even during COVID. They went all virtual, but it's building community. It's providing, it's providing a place for volunteers, for families, for pets and families to get together to enjoy each other's company, to celebrate Halloween. They put on a pet appreciation day earlier this year. So it's really great to see these organizations not only working internationally, but right here in our city. So happy to honor them. And so that was Saturday morning. And then on Sunday morning, I joined multiple runners in Mountain View for the 29th annual Friends of the Stevens Creek Trailblazer race. And I've been running that race for multiple years now. But it's raises funds for all the efforts that Friends of the Stevens Creek Trail do, but highlights the need to protect that trail, expand that trail, and always good to be out there for getting exercise. Met a lot of Sunnyvale residents, Mountain View residents, and happy to support that, support that race. The vice mayor for Mountain View, Pat Showalter, was the grand marshal this year, and I think it was good to talk to her and several of their council members who actually attended that event. And then Sunday evening, of course, started Yom Kippur. So it's the Day of Atonement for those in our Jewish faith. So I got invited to several events, and thanks to those, we actually have a large Jewish community here in Sunnyvale, and thanks to those, and I hope that they had a reflective and peaceful day. And then on Tuesday, council met, and we actually started off with several basically a study session to talk about several issues. The first of which we talked about advocacy letters, and we do the city takes advocacy position, council takes advocacy positions at the beginning of every year, and so is to give more feedback for that process, and so council member Gabe did that. And then we talked a little bit about our housing element. We're going through that process, and like many cities, we don't have a finalized housing element yet. It is kind of interesting to see some of the comments that we received. They didn't give us all the comments to begin with when HCD, the housing department, from the state standpoint, reviewed our housing element. They didn't give everything, and so I think the biggest thing are some mitigation fees, but we've been working with HCD throughout December, and I think we're finally have an housing element that will be able to be approved. And then we actually had several, actually quite a few special orders of the day. We had SV Women Foundation come in dealing with domestic violence, come in to talk about Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And then we had a special order of the day for Active Aging Week. There's lots of events coming up in October for Active Aging Week at the Senior Center. It's Art and Humanities Month in October. And finally, we had several of the Muwekma tribe members show up for Indigenous Peoples Day. And so, and Sunnyvale hasn't celebrated Columbus Day for many years, but it was good to basically celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day and, have some of the Muwekma tribes, the Muwekma Ohlone tribe members who had this land long before we did, and were stewards of that land. And that's one of the things that we honored them by naming the new park at the old AMD campus as Muwekma Park. But members of that tribe were there for Indigenous Peoples Day, and I was happy to honor them. And then we said goodbye to our assistant city manager, Terry Silva, who recently retired. She joined the organization, I think in 2010, as our human relations director, and then became assistant city manager about 6 years ago, 7 years ago, and now to see her retire. So it was great to wish her well in her retirement and thank her for her service to our city. And then as far as our main meeting, we approved they basically becoming a mutual stakeholder in Sunnyvale Community Services. So they had an outstanding mortgage of $4 million. And what we ended up doing was saying, we'll pay off that loan to become a stakeholder in that building, in that property, which is good for us. It's fantastic for Sunnyvale Community Services. They were paying about $200,000 a year on basically dealing with that loan. And so that frees up $200,000, more than $200,000 a year that they can now apply to services, to buying food. And, I think that's been one of the biggest things as we've seen inflation go through. Second Harvest hasn't been able to get as much food and distribute as much food, and especially getting protein has been very difficult. And so Sunnyvale Community Services has had to buy, eggs and milk and all that. So from that standpoint, fantastic to see, Sunnyvale Community Services continue to do good work, and having the city pay off its loan actually makes things a lot better for Sunnyvale Community Services. They don't have to deal with all the issues that deal with servicing that loan. And we have a long-term stake in that building. And for me, that's actually a really a smart investment of our city's money. They are our main service provider, providing that food, providing, backpacks and gift cards to families for kids going back to school, and just making sure that, those preventing homelessness is critical. Those right on the edge of being evicted from their homes, from their apartments, trying to make sure that they retain that so that they don't get into this cycle of being unhoused. And so, I think I give them kudos. It was great to see Marie Bernard and several members of the board there to advocate, but council unanimously approved that decision. I don't think it was it was a hard decision at all, but it's great to be a stakeholder in the success of Sunnyvale Community Services, be able to pay off their loan, and of course the big thing is be able to have them free up money that they were having to pay to service that loan to apply to other things. So fantastic to see that move forward. And then on Wednesday, the Biden administration relaunched the website where Americans can again order free at-home COVID tests. So, the website had been shut down since June or July, but came back online. And so just as really COVID vaccines are being rolled out across the country, as we're seeing, a general uptick in the number of COVID cases around the nation. So all you need to do is go to covid.gov/tests. I think it's also covidtests.gov. Either of those I think work, but covid.gov/tests, and you will see instructions on how to basically request for kits to be delivered at your home, completely free. The USPS will manage that, and I think what they ended up doing during COVID was having regional distribution centers, so it's not coming from one centralized site. But you don't have to pay for shipping. You just provide your name and address and place that order. I've already done mine, and and you can actually track. They'll actually track where that delivery is. So fairly easy to do. And as we get into COVID and flu season, it's important to have those test kits available. Last night, I was actually in San Jose for the Silicon Valley Business Journal Structure Awards. Multiple projects here in Sunnyvale ended up getting awards. So like the Google's new mass timber project received an award as far as what the greenest building. There's they had, interior development. Irvine received an award for their Redwood Square project. And actually Cirrus Regis was Developer of the Year. They're the ones that are doing the Martin project, the 11 stories of apartments with the retail on the bottom right downtown. And Cirrus Regis has been doing projects in Sunnyvale for numerous years, but it was great to see, them there and talk to them as far as getting that award and all the good that they're doing here in Sunnyvale, as well as around the Bay Area. And then also last night, I was at Fire Station 5 to congratulate 17 residents who just finished at our Citizens Academy. And so this was our first Citizens Academy after COVID, and I went through it about 5 years ago, but it's an 8-week course where, residents get a behind the scenes view of public safety and, and ultimately how our unique model serves the community. So it's understanding, putting out fires and, what the canine officers do. It's actually, seeing officers work on the jaws of life and tearing apart a vehicle that conceivably someone might be trapped in. It's getting, up on the ladder and taking a bird's eye view of Sunnyvale. So it's getting, what real experience is driving a police car, putting on handcuffs, all those sorts of things, going through the police simulator of responding to incidents. And, I think it's eye-opening for people, for residents to understand, the issues and the difficulties of being, a public safety officer. And I think that it really creates a bridge between our residents and public safety. So we'll be doing it again next year. Hopefully, people can attend and will apply. And then, of course, earlier today, it was announced that Senator Feinstein had passed away last night, and and I think she was still at her home in Washington. Watching the news this morning, she served decades for California, and she was actually the longest serving female senator. But she's just an amazing woman. She made a real difference in politics and in history for that matter. So it'll be interesting to see how it'll be how the next few weeks go. Her death, of course, gives Governor Newsom the power to appoint a lawmaker to serve out the rest of Feinstein's term, and making sure that we keep the Democratic majority in the chamber. But it'll be interesting to see how that decision is done. Governor Newsom was let's say lambasted a few weeks ago in some of his comments that he made on one of the Sunday morning press shows or something. But Feinstein death also comes when we're looking at the federal funding is set to expire. And so Congress is somewhat at an impasse to avoid a government shutdown. So we'll see what happens over the next week. But Senate Democrats still retain a majority without Feinstein there. But there will be a lot of pressure on Governor Newsom to appoint someone as quickly as possible. So we'll see what happens with that process. And then, of course, lots of funeral events around the Bay Area, especially, that'll be happening over the next few weeks as we figure out how different cities and how the state is in the nation are going to be honoring Senator Feinstein and her amazing service to our state, to our residents, and to the country. So if you hadn't heard, definitely it's at the top of the news today. As I said previously, I won't be focusing on weekly COVID numbers, unless things change dramatically. But you can start getting your COVID booster, COVID shot, and it's available to everyone 6 months and older. But I do hear that there are a certain amount of distribution issues, and the cost is, depending upon your coverage, a lot more than when the government was getting it, and so paying for it. So we'll see how that rolls out throughout the fall. I continue to spend lots of time advocating on our city's behalf, at the county, state, and federal level. Last week I was in Sacramento, talking to multiple people, and for me, it's trying to make sure that Sunnyvale is well represented, is getting our fair share from funding, as well as just making sure that where our voice is being heard. So happy to do that, talking to our county supervisor, and trying to make sure that Sunnyvale is in a good place. Let me go ahead and announce some of the upcoming events. So tomorrow, Saturday, Friends of the Sunnyvale Library is sponsoring a queer taiko on the library plaza from 3 to 4 p.m. And so Queer Taiko is, I think it's an Oakland-based group that's, multicultural, intergenerational, LGBTQ plus individuals and allies committed to really building community and representation. And visibility, of course, through Japanese taiko drumming. So it should be a lively event on the plaza tomorrow afternoon. So come join that. And that's put on, of course, by the Friends of the Sunnyvale Library. This is one of the best things they have. The book sales, year round, and the proceeds from that help fund programs like that, that are happening tomorrow, that celebrate, culture, celebrate, in this case, LGBTQ community. But hopefully I'll see you there. And of course, Halloween is right around the corner. So Sundays in October, there will be scary movies at the library. So I think starting October 8th will be The Exorcist. October 15th will be Suspiria. October 22nd will be Alien. And so those are starting at 2 p.m. And then on October 29th, there'll be a family-friendly Halloween movie, Frankenweenie. So definitely take a look at the library calendar to figure out what movies you might want to attend. Thursday, October 12th, there'll be a ribbon cutting for Rumble Boxing. So actually that whole weekend, Thursday through, I think, Saturday, they'll be having a grand opening celebration. And so, I toured Rumble Boxing. It's right there on TAFE, right between Washington and McKinley, in City Line, Sunnyvale. And I toured that place a few weeks ago, and was actually impressed how the interior looked, and that's already being actively used. So there's already lots of classes and people signed up. And then on October 14th, there's lots of things happening that day. So first, there is a firefighter pancake breakfast. And that's back at Fire Station 5 from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Sorry, not Fire Station 5, Fire Station 2. And Fire Station 2 is at Wolf Road in Arquez. But yeah, it's good to see that being back after first time since COVID, and all the proceeds will benefit the Elisa Ann Roush Burn Foundation, and so hopefully people can attend that, and there'll be booze and there'll be events for the kids, but definitely come out and attend that. There's also going to be a solar eclipse that morning around 8:45 to, I think, 10. And so on the library plaza, before the library opens up, there will be astronomers there and enthusiasts there to show safe ways to look at the solar eclipse. And then that same day is actually Day on the Bay. So There will be, Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition ride to Alviso. We did that last year, and we'll be doing it again this year. So happy to work with Bike Sunnyvale on that event. And then as far as upcoming council meetings, our next council meeting is in 2 weeks on Tuesday, October 10th. It'll start out with a study session focused on the Climate Action Playbook. So our next game plan. That'll go to 2028. And then as far as special orders of the day, we'll be honoring Breast Cancer Awareness Month, National Friends to the Library Week, and Freedom from Workplace Bullies Week, and Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And then as far as general business, we'll look at kind of the long-term operation and maintenance of the Orchard Heritage Park, and a review, doing a contract to evaluate the options for the operation of the Heritage Park, as well as the proposed expansion of the Sunnyvale Historical Society and Museum. So should be hopefully a light evening as far as that's concerned, but very busy. Let me go ahead and get to questions. If you have a question, just add them to the chat and I'll try to get them to them today. Hazit asked, it's not a huge concern, but at Washington and Matilda, no right turn on red sign is not visible due to a branch of trees covering it partially. Apologies if this is not the right medium, but don't know whom to reach out to do the same. So thank you, Asit. No, it's good that you ask, but there's Access Sunnyvale. So if you go to the top of the city's website, sunnyvale.ca.gov, and you'll see in the upper right-hand corner, there's a tab called Access Sunnyvale. And that's for reporting any issue that you might see, whether or not that's, a cracked sidewalk, a pothole, a traffic light that's out, or in this case, a street tree that's blocking, a turn sign or a stoplight or something of that nature. That's your one-stop shop for raising any issue that you might have around the city. It's even, where you can request a speaker, where you can, report an abandoned vehicle, graffiti, all that is right there on that website. You upload photos if you want and all that, but it's an easy way. And then you can also get a request if you want, put in a request if you want to get an update on when it's closed or how it's closed. So then, as opposed to just reporting it and letting staff work it out. Joshua asked, great to hear about safe routes to school investment near Lakewood Elementary. Is there a layout or diagram of upcoming changes that we can see on the website? Assemblymember Lowe got us as part of the state budget $1.75 million for improvements around Lakewood Elementary. And those improvements were called out in our active transportation plan that was approved in, I think, 2020. So several years ago. And there's improvements for kind of general safer travel for bikes and pedestrians. So there's curb radius reductions, curb extensions to kind of slow down traffic, pedestrian safety signs and striping, and then just ADA curb ramp improvements. And so if you go to the active transportation plan, you can kind of see those called out of what the different changes around the elementary school are and around that park. So I think, that's the best place to go. I can try to dig those out and show them at a future meeting if you want, but definitely that's the best place to see that overall overview. Michael asked, what is happening at the old Wendy's location at Matilda and Maud? So that is rapidly becoming a Taco Bell. And that will be our 5th Taco Bell in Sunnyvale. Wasn't until I started thinking about all the different locations that we even had that many Taco Bells in the city. There's one on El Camino. There's one on Wolf Road at Kiefer. There's one on Tasman near Lawrence Expressway, and there's one on Hollenbeck that I always forget about too. So, there's already 4 in the city, and we're going to be getting a 5th one. It looks like they're popular and must be doing well, or they wouldn't be adding another location. Pauline asked, why did Tacos Jalapa close? And so ultimately, and we're seeing this in certain portions of the city right now, that the owner of the building, who had been the long-term landlord, passed away, and the building was sold, and the new owner is raising rents, or wouldn't give an extended lease because they have a different vision for that location. And so I talked to I talked to the owner, for the person who operated Tacos Jalapa, and was sorry to hear that after he was able to put his Cristobal was able to put his daughter through college by running that restaurant, and just sorry to see that a business closed that had been part of our community for so many years. But that was another one of those cases where the landlord passed away, or the the owner passed away, the kids sold it, and now it's questionable about how long they would be able to operate there. And Chris the taco man ended up deciding to close. So sorry to see him go. It was one of my places that I frequented quite often. Cam asked previously, hi Larry, thanks for answering your questions every week. I read in the news about the Oriental fruit fly quarantine. It talks about what people in the affected areas should do. However, it only mentioned parts of Sunnyvale. My question is specifically, which parts of Sunnyvale are affected? And based on the map, it's pretty much all of Sunnyvale. Please help clarify. So, and thank you for very, very much for being reachable. So Cam, thanks for your question. It's led me to weeks of getting information and working with city staff, working with county vector control, working with Supervisor Lee's office. So yes, it is all of Sunnyvale, all of Santa Clara. I finally got the county to update its press release. And I've also talked to San Jose Mercury News, because they just took the press release and duplicated what the county press release said, but it's all of Sunnyvale, Santa Clara, but it also touched areas that hadn't been mentioned, Mountain View, Saratoga, Campbell, all were part. I think even a little bit of Los Gatos was partially affected. And that also conceivably affects how the farmers markets are run. They're going, requesting, the county's working with the farmers markets to try to limit the amount of food that they bring there that might be, and making sure that it's covered. So they're still working out that. Karen asked, kind of as supplemental, is putting excess rotten produce grown on your property into food waste recycling bin allowable? It's actually the preferred way, as opposed to throwing into the garbage. If you have, lemons or grapefruit, or now it's persimmon season, that have fallen from your tree that you didn't get to, it's normally best to put it into waste recycling bin. That being said, the county vector control, when they talked about the fruit fly, said that all of your fruits and vegetables should be double bagged and thrown into the garbage, not the food cycle. And so staff has been working with the county vector, and they toured the smart station. And our staff discussed the concerns with them during the tour of what the right process would be. So we're still working on that. We're waiting for further direction from after their visit and analysis. And once we hear that from the county, we'll be, distributing that information with residents accordingly. But the county press release said, okay, if you had fruit or vegetables, especially fruit, it should be double bagged and just thrown into the garbage to go into the landfill. And that kind of defeats some of our goals for the food cycle program. So hopefully we'll clarify that with the county soon and get that information out to the residents. Kathleen asked, do you know what type of business will be going into the Murphy's Law now that it's been sold? So I've heard, nothing clear right now, but it's still going to be a bar, upgraded with more food options, but haven't heard any time frame for what's going to be done there as far as that's concerned. And so hopefully, that becomes clearer as we go forward. Stephen asked, let me go to some of today's questions. If you have questions, just add them to the chat. Stephen asked, can you explain why retired and former DPS officers and employees are attacking DPS chief? No. San Jose Spotlight article. Yes. So I can't give any, details about why they're doing it. This is definitely from our standpoint, and the San Jose Spotlight article did capture a few of my comments. I talked to the reporter for about 20 minutes, and they were calling back to surveys from 2020 and 2021 in the middle of COVID, which it's like, being a public safety officer wasn't an easy sort of thing. You look at, and it wasn't easy for anyone, first responders, whether or not that's nurses or anyone on the front lines working with residents, was not easy during COVID. Why they are calling out the chief, it's like and they were asking, part of the question was, is the council ready to fire the chief? Well, council has two direct reports. Council has the city attorney, which manages the legal staff, and the city manager, which handles the rest of city staff. From that standpoint, we only have direct control, and we have policy in place that we're not supposed to get into the operational activities of what's happening in the city. We set service levels, we set direction, we set vision, but so why certain ex-public safety officers have issue with the chief? Definitely, I've had great dealings with him. I've had lots of residents reach out after the article and say that they're completely behind what the chief does. So it is difficult. And I was actually happy that at least the reporter caught a little bit of the union leadership saying that they're actively working with the chief and working on issues, and wasn't as negative as some of the ex-public safety officers. So I was a little disheartened to hear that, being and especially having the reporter highlight that. But it is what it is. There's the reporters are looking for drama. They're looking for something that grabs eyeballs, and definitely had a lot of people reach out after that article. So, but it is what it is. And from council standpoint, we couldn't fire the chief, but we could from a city manager standpoint. I've talked to him, and as far as he's concerned, it is one of the directors of one of our departments, our public safety. And as much as they called out that there's issues within public safety, we're seeing lots of officers want to join our public safety department, and so and we're close to our 201 sworn officers. We actually had from our fire academy that just graduated a few weeks ago, we had 5 officers that had transferred, experienced officers that transferred from the county sheriff's department in Santa Clara County, Monterey, the Santa Cruz Police Department, officers with years of experience that wanted to come to our merged model because they thought it was better. So, it's always interesting to see. And I'll say, I don't know all the operations and all the issues at all levels of our department, but from what I've seen, our residents appreciate public safety and have appreciated the leadership and the efforts that have been made over the last few years. Looks like all the questions that I can at least see now. There's always problems as far as Facebook kind of hides them as I'm going through, but let me go ahead and wrap up. Thanks for joining me again this week. We live in interesting times and new issues come up almost every day, but I want you to know that no matter what challenges we face, We face them together. I'm proud of Sunnyvale and how our residents have, responded to the challenges over the last few years. And, I'm just thankful for how they build community, how, they care for others, they show their generosity, show their kindness. It is truly amazing and makes us the happiest city in the nation still. But your actions and your attitude really do make a difference. Sunnyvale will emerge from this as a stronger community. We're in this together and we will get through this together. Thanks for listening. Have a good weekend. Goodbye.